say thanks to God who has been giving us guidance, happiness, healthy, and mercy, so we can attend and participate in this event without any obstacles. In this occasion, I'd like to welcome Ma'am Andrea M. Garner from University of Idaho as our distinguished keynote speaker at our event today. Welcome, Ma'am Andrea.
Thank you.
The Honorable, the Dean of Faculty of Language and Literature, Universitas PGRI Kanjuruhan Malang, Mr. Rusfandi MA PhD. The Honorable, the Director of Balai Bahasa, State University of Malang, Mrs. Dr. Utari Praba Astuti MA. The Honorable, all of the teachers, lecturers, and the students who participate in this webinar. Gentlemen, before we begin this event, let us pray together. May God makes this event beneficial for all of us, and this event can run well. Start praying.
Langsung shadow langsung. Coba.
Ini.
Mohon maaf, Ibu Jihan masih mute.
Oh my God.
No, it's only a couple of seconds. Please carry on.
All right. Before I read some following agendas, let me explain a bit about this webinar. So, State University of Malang proposed a very beneficial collaboration with UNIKAMA by conducting this webinar. Second language learners might find writing in English challenging, thus this webinar can be seen as an enrichment to help the students write better. Now, allow me to read several sequences of our agenda. The first is opening, which we previously did together. The second is welcoming speech from the Dean of Faculty of Language and Literature, Universitas PGRI Kanjuruhan Malang. The third is welcoming speech and officially open the webinar from the Director of Balai Bahasa, State University of Malang. The fourth is main agenda, which will be led by the moderator. The fifth is the presentation from our keynote speaker. And the sixth is question and answer. The last is closing. Step on to the following agenda is welcoming speech from the Dean of Faculty of Language and Literature, Universitas PGRI Kanjuruhan Malang, for Mr. Rusfandi MA PhD. Time is yours.
Thank you very much. Just check my voice first. Is that okay? Is it clear enough? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable, the Director of Academic Writing Center of Balai Bahasa dan Budaya Universitas Negeri Malang, the Honorable Dr. Andrea M. Garner from Idaho University as the keynote speaker of today's webinar, and all the participants of today's webinar. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to express my appreciations and thankfulness to the Academic Writing Center, Balai Bahasa dan Budaya Universitas Negeri Malang, Universitas PGRI Kanjuruhan Malang, and all the committee for successfully conducting this webinar. It is a great honor for me to be here and deliver this welcoming speech. My appreciations and thankfulness also go to Dr. Andrea M. Garner for having the time to share knowledge and experience with us concerning academic writings and publication. I see a lot of participants today from different universities, including from my institutions, the Faculty of Language and Literature, Universitas PGRI Kanjuruhan Malang. The topic of today's webinar, academic writing for publication, is essential because it specifically addresses the needs of participants today, who are mostly undergraduate and postgraduate students. In my institution, and probably also in other universities, being able to publish an article either in Indonesian journals or international journals become one of the requirements before graduation, especially for postgraduate students. For these reasons, many students are struggling now with their academic writings because they need to transform their thesis or scriptsy for undergraduate students into a publishable article. This is obviously not easy for most of them, even for us, okay, as the lecturers. Challenges are also faced by the lecturers as the students are usually supervised by their thesis or scriptsy advisors. The advisors also have the responsibility to guide the students to transform the thesis into publishable article. The bright side, however, is that both students and lecturers are becoming productive or forced to be productive now, despite these challenges. We are fortunate today because we have Dr. Andrea M. Garner as the speaker for today's webinar. She will share with us about workable tips based on her valuable knowledge and experience on how to see, approach, and write a publishable article. Finally, I do hope you can fully participate in the webinar, upgrade your knowledge, and get workable tips for writing as scholarly articles. Perhaps that is all I could say in this welcoming speech. Thank you very much and have a great webinar on academic writing for publication. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mr. Ruswadi, MA, PhD. The third agenda is welcoming speech and officially open the webinar from the Director of Balai Bahasa, State University of Malang, for Mrs. Dr. Utari Praba Astuti, MA. Time is yours.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yusnita Febrianti. I am the person in charge for the project of for collaborative project between Regional English Language Office, U.S. Embassy Jakarta, and Balai Bahasa and Budaya Universitas Negeri Malang in the establishment of Academic Writing Center at Balai Bahasa and Budaya Universitas Negeri Malang. We apologize that Ibu Utari is engaged in another activity, so I am speaking here in her stand to welcome you all into our webinar this morning. Everyone, it is our honor, it is our pleasure to welcome you all, to have you all in our webinar for academic writing and publication. Academic Writing Center has been established for more or less 1 year now here at the Balai Bahasa Universitas Negeri Malang. Our core business or our core idea is to try to establish a culture of writing, a habit of writing, introducing academic writing to undergrad students, also helping some students from the postgrad programs that has challenges in writing. Writing, everyone, especially academic writing, is a bit different than other types of writing. However, this skill is learnable. This skill is something that we can improve over time by having continuous practice. And this is the main reason why the Academic Writing Center at Balai Bahasa Universitas Negeri Malang is established. We are very grateful to have the sponsorship, to have the support from RILO US Embassy Jakarta. And other than that, we are also very grateful to have Andrea as our academic writing consultant that has been with us from the beginning of the year, or from the beginning of the program establishment, nurturing us as tutors here at the Academic Writing Center to conduct seminars and webinars and workshops like this to help us all to get more and more skills, getting better at academic writing. In terms of collaboration, we have worked together with a couple of universities here in Malang, as well as other universities, such as one university in Kediri and another university in Yogyakarta. We really hope that these opportunities can be our first collaboration in having a webinar or workshop in academic writing, because again, academic writing is a skill that we need to improve continuously. We can't just stop at this point. We really hope that there will be some continuous collaboration between us all in developing the habit, the culture of writing academic writing articles in various forms, especially here between us universities in Malang. I appreciate Bapak Ruswandi, the Dean of the Faculty of Language and Literature at Universitas Kanjuruhan Malang, to be present at this occasion. Terima kasih banyak Bapak atas kehadirannya pagi hari ini. Mudah-mudahan acara ini membawa manfaat bagi kita semua. Without further ado, everyone, thank you so much for being here. We are going to get into our main agenda, which is the presentation by Andrea Mason-Garner. To end my speech, we would like to officially welcome you to the webinar, and we would like to officially open this webinar. Over to you, Ibu Jihan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to Ma'am Yusnita Febrianti for opening this webinar. So the fourth is the main agenda, which will be hosted by Kak Nisa Mawarda Rohman as the moderator. For Kak Nisa, time is yours.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jihan Rohmawati, as the MC of today's webinar. Can you hear my voice?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. And let me introduce myself first. My name is Nisa Mawarda Rohman, and I am as a staff at Academic Writing Center, Balai Bahasa Universitas Negeri Malang. So today we are going to have a great webinar since we have so many participants here. We have around 150 participants here. And also before let Ibu Andrea have the presentation today, let me introduce Ibu Andrea. So Ibu Andrea, hi.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you today?
Fine, Nisa. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So Ibu Andrea Mason-Garner is from University of Idaho, and she is the expert in teaching, training, and advising experience. And also, maybe I will share the screen for you guys so you can see Ibu Andrea curriculum vitae here. All right. So as you can see that Ibu Andrea also has been conducting the becoming the English Language Fellow, U.S. State Department in UIN Malang at 2019 to 2020. She also becoming the International Academic Student Advisor, Navitas at University of Idaho, Moscow, and also becoming the teacher in University of Idaho American Language and Culture Program, Moscow, Idaho in 2018. And also there are so many activities, including the teaching and also the training program that she always do in current 10 years. And also she has the publications in several journals, and she also the professional presenters and in service, and also there are so many professional presentation service and also the awards. And also there are so many project management, development, and also financial experience that she has. And also in community service, she has been experienced in 1994. Wow, up to now in in Relo, becoming the Academic Writing Center consultant right now. And also Ibu Andrea becoming our Relo Fellow from 2020 up 21, sorry, up to now. And without any words, I will give this session to Ibu Andrea Messen-Garner. So Ibu Andrea Messen-Garner, are you ready?
I am ready. Thank you, Nisa. I will go ahead and share my screen.
Okay, so Ibu Andrea Messen-Garner, the time is yours.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Nisa, can you start? There you go. Thank you.
Right.
All right. Do you see my title screen?
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay, great. And is there another host that can continue to admit participants?
I think
We got it covered, Andrea. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. So I am very excited and honored to be here and to be part of this seminar. We are a team. I happen to be the spokesperson, but it takes a team to put these events together. And so I just want to give credit to the entire UM Academic Writing Center for coordinating this seminar this morning. So, as you heard, I've been active in Indonesia since 2019, in country and now working virtually. It's fascinating for me to learn and grow academically in Indonesia. So, and as you know, I've been working on this project with UM for over a year, nearly 15 months. And so we're pretty proud of what we've done in that time. But this session this morning will focus on academic writing and publication. Please put your questions in the chat box as you think of them, and or we will definitely have Q&A at the end, as we heard as the final agenda item. If there's language or translation needs, please give us an indication in the chat box, and we will certainly assist with that as well. All right. So I'm going to be talking about the aspects of getting published, but to do that, I'm going to take us through the writing process and hopefully identify some tips or some issues that sometimes cause us challenges in our academic writing. So for most of us, getting published is our goal. And so I'm going to use that as the overall goal. But even if you're not seeking publication, these academic writing tips and advice are applicable. But let's talk about why articles don't get published before we go too much further. And I'm just going to walk us through this list, and we can talk about them further in the course of the presentation. But sometimes the manuscript is sent to the wrong journal, and we'll talk about how you can avoid that by choosing the right journal. Sometimes our paper or our manuscript just doesn't provide any new information, and so we need to avoid that. It's a fundamental rule that our papers must contribute something new to our research field. Perhaps in number 3, the information that you are referring to or using to support your arguments is just too old or out of date, so you're not using current research data. Or in number 4, your topic is too narrow. Remember that we want a topic that connect with various contexts, that your topic can make a difference. And if it's too narrow, then the audience is too narrow. In 5, important contributions are missing. So maybe it's a well-written paper, but there's actually no contributions or implications that you've addressed in your paper. And 6, sometimes an author may have overdone the literature review, and it becomes more of a report of research rather than an interpretation of research. So we'll need to avoid that. In 7, sometimes we may try to pass off a paper or manuscript that was a class paper, a class assignment, as a publication or an article to be published, but without revising it to fit the journal's requirements. In 8, it's possible that the methodology isn't adequately explained in the paper. And in number 9, the paper really doesn't make a point. So at the end, I get to the end of the conclusion and I think, so what? That would be kind of sad to read a paper and it doesn't make a point, and a reader concludes, well, so what? What was the important part of this paper? It's not obvious. And 10, unfortunately, is sometimes papers are not well written, but that can be avoided with adequate proofreading, editing, peer review, and review by an academic writing center tutor if you have access to one. But I will also share some tips for editing and proofreading on your own. All right, so let's carry on here. I can get my... So, preparing to write a research paper. So I just wanted to quickly, I know we're all in the academic world, but just touch on the shape of a research article because it helps give us focus in the slides that will follow. And then in order to prepare to write a research article, we need to make sure that we identify a topic. And I will present some ideas for identifying a topic, choosing a journal, and then at that point, the author, you are ready to draft the literature review. So let's look at the overall shape. Besides the title and abstract, we always start with our introduction, moving to the methods, on to results, then to the discussion, and of course, with the conclusion at the end. But I think it's important to remind ourselves that these sections are not equal per se, and they're not written the same way. So in the introduction / lit review, because the introduction often includes a literature review, we move we start very general in our writing, and then we end very specifically. In fact, at the end of the introduction lit review, we have clarified our aim of our study, what we expect our contribution to be, and we finish with specific research questions. That leads us right into the methods section, which is fairly straightforward. Therefore, it's a square. It's really a clear explanation of your methods. I'll talk about that further later. The results are fairly straightforward. They're results. But the discussion is very significant, just like the introduction lit review. And at this point, we go the opposite direction. We start with the specific interpretation of results and then broaden our discussion to make our paper or our findings more connected to the larger research world. So this is just a shape that I want you to keep in mind as you think about your own writing. So I just reviewed the key aspects, the key structure of any research paper. Like I said, the introduction lit review, they could be two separate sections or they could be blended together. And the discussion, which includes your implications, may include the conclusion, or it could be a separate conclusion. And of course, you have your references. So let's start with identifying a topic. Sometimes you've got great topic ideas that have come up in your classes or your reading, but sometimes we don't have a great topic idea. So I always recommend starting with broad ideas. Just keep an open mind to broad ideas that you can narrow later. So let's say you have a broad idea. So now you're ready to review, which is really skimming, not a deep read, but skimming academic journals for articles related to your topic that can help you identify potential research topics. This is when you begin to narrow your topic and collect those ideas. And then we're going to evaluate them in order to make an informed decision about a topic. So in this case, we've got those broad ideas that we're beginning to narrow. We're doing this because we've come up with 3 to 5 areas of interest as we skimmed the articles, the journals that seem to relate to our topic. Again, stay open because if we go into a topic search with an agenda, then we're not keeping our eyes and mind open for other ideas. But it's important to think of a topic or identify a topic that you can get excited about, that motivates you, because a research paper and doing the research and writing and preparing for publication takes a commitment. And so you want to be working on something that motivates you, that interests you. And then now you're ready to start trying to narrow your topic. And at this point, you can go back to the articles that seem the most connected to the topic that you're pursuing. And now you're going to read a bit more deeply the title, the abstract, the introduction. And think about the paper, think about what's original about that paper. And so at this point, you should be ready to, as I said, you're starting to review that literature. And as you're reviewing that literature, keep in mind what's the current state of research in this particular area or this topic. Where's a gap that you can fill? And typically you can find gap ideas In the conclusion or the discussion section about, there's often writers will present ideas for further research because of some things that they weren't able to do within their study, or just that they're contributing their ideas for others to pursue. So you can always look for those ideas to locate a gap. And you can also be looking at the reference list on the papers that interest you the most. Look at what references they have used and continue to read and gather information. So now at this point, you should have a pretty good idea of your top ideas, and you've made a selection and you're ready to choose a journal. So you've got a topic, and if you're interested in publication, you should be thinking about the journal before you begin your paper. It's ideal to do this before, because if you look for your journal after you've written your paper, you may have to rewrite your paper, reorganize your paper to fit the structure or the requirements of the journal. So what's key about choosing the right journal is that the journal, that your article and your journal are a nice match, that your article clearly fits within the focus of the journal. You can find on every journal has a website now that clearly explains their aims and their objectives and what type of materials that they are looking for. So be sure to do your homework and look at the journal website as well as the journal's template. So as you're thinking about your journal, these are just some ideas or tips to consider. I already mentioned about making sure that the aim of your article fits with the aim of the journal. But you can get started by asking your colleagues or faculty members what kind of journals do they recommend for your particular topic. Again, look at the references on the papers you've read. What journals are those articles published in? Make sure to avoid any journal that asks for a payment for you to publish. You can easily avoid that situation. Be sure, and number 2, as you're reviewing potential journals, that if you're getting close on a journal, closely read the articles in that particular journal to make sure that you understand the type of articles that are typically published within that journal. This will be very appreciated by the editors of the journal once you submit your article for publication. And it also shows that you have done your due diligence and you understand what that journal is looking for. And then you can rank your journals that you found by how closely you match their aim, scope, and audience. Perhaps the impact factor is important for you in consideration, and so forth. So at this point, let's assume that you've got your topic and you've identified a journal, or at least you've prioritized your journals and you're comfortable with the journal requirements and the templates. So what's next for you as an academic author of a scholarly article? Well, this is when you can begin to draft your introduction lit review section. You have just done a preliminary skim of the literature in your topic identification. So now you're ready to take that a step further to do a full literature review. But notice I said draft because you're going to draft this review before you've actually done your research. And so we always have to circle back to our introduction lit review to update it and to make sure everything's connected once we've finished our research, our results, and discussed, completed our discussion section. So, but starting the draft is essential, and it'll help guide you as you move forward. So the introduction and literature review has a reputation, and I think it's well deserved, that it's a difficult section or sections to write. But why? Well, part of it ties back to the diagram I showed a few slides ago, where we start from a broad perspective and then we move fairly quickly to a more specific tone. So that takes practice and diligence to be able to structure your writing from a broad to narrow tone. There's my advice there, if you have, or you're struggling and or need models, is refer to a well-written article in a journal, a respected journal, and use it as your model. I'll also give you some tips this morning, but I always keep a couple of well-written journals near me when I'm writing, not to copy what they've said, but to use their language structure and their style to help improve my writing. But the lit review is also challenging because we have to integrate our citations. We need to acknowledge and enter the argument, so to speak, of the current literature. We have to talk about previous literature and identify how our study is going to make a difference. So all of those are skills that can be learned and practiced. So I will give you some tips on those. So let's talk about this a little further. How do we do this? How do we get started, especially in the introduction section? Well, there's 3 moves that are almost essential in any article to quickly establish the purpose of the article and engage the reader and move forward. So move 1 is where we actually establish a research territory. So meaning that, and I'll show you, I'll give you a couple tips of how you can do this. And then in 2, we've got to establish kind of a research spot for us, like for our paper or our manuscript. What that means is often described as there needs to be a research gap or a research need that you are clearly demonstrating in this introduction. And in move 3, you are entering this conversation, the conversation of previous research, current scholars, and so you are entering the discussion of your particular topic and your particular research need or gap. So let's look on how this actually works. So move 1, you're establishing a research territory, and that is easily conveyed with, these are just 2 ideas of many, many, many others, but much has been written about the topic, or several studies have explored the issue of, on whatever that issue is that your topic is addressing. Just those few words satisfy move 1, where you're establishing a research territory, meaning you are clearly communicating what the topic is, the subject. In move 2, this is where you are clearly communicating what the research need or the research gap is. This is how you are going to make a contribution. So if it's a gap, you could say something like, no studies have looked or examined or focused on a particular topic, your topic. Or adding a little bit more information, you could say, over the past 10 years, several studies have focused on the topic, cite your studies, while neglecting the issue of whatever your particular research question or topic is. That's a more, maybe a more complex gap, but I like the way that's presented. If your gap is actually described more as a need, it could be presented like further investigations are needed to confirm. So maybe this might follow studies that have previously been done that came up with a certain result, but they're limited. So you want to investigate further to confirm those previous studies. That is also acceptable. Now move 3, you've introduced your gap, and now you're going to let the reader know what the aim of the purpose of your paper is, or the aim of your purpose. So it could be simple, like in the first one. This article begins with A, it continues with B, and it concludes with C. That's very basic. So as the second one, our intent in writing this article is to, and you explain the purpose. Those are both basic, but they're very clear, and it's a clear signal to the reader that you have adequately moved from move 1, 2, and 3 in the course of your introduction. I want to look at this example I'm presenting here. It's a, I can't quite see the bottom of my screen, but it's from an article that is very early in the introduction. It might say there at the bottom, I just can't see it. But in move 1, I've got highlighted in yellow, as evidenced in the literature. So clearly stating that this is a subject that has been researched. There is an established research territory about this particular topic. The topic just happens to be around peer tutors in writing centers. The topic isn't important for this morning, but the move is move 1, as evidenced in the literature. And remember move 2, right, is identifying let's go back just because it's just good to remember. If I can get back. Establishing the research niche. So this is where you're explaining your gap. So in blue, however, by focusing on the transitory roles that tutors should or should not play in a tutorial, tutors are prevented from conceptualizing what it actually means to be a tutor, and consequently, the identity that they must construct to become one. So that is fairly lengthy, but the author has done a good job on indicating that tutors have been prevented from, in the literature, tutors have been prevented from conceptualizing what it actually means to be a tutor. And then that impacts their identity. And then in move 3, And in green, this author clearly states, I argue that when preparation programs focus on aspects of teacher identity, new tutors are better prepared to assume the professional identity of a writing tutor, and so forth. So this move 1, move 2, move 3 were done within 2 paragraphs within the introduction section. I've included the citation for the article if you'd like to see the entire article there. But I think it's helpful when we can actually see how other authors use the moves in the introduction. But there's a lot going on in the introduction and literature review besides move 1, 2, and 3. We know that we need to summarize and integrate or synthesize our articles, correct? The literature that we are going to use to support our paper. So summarizing and synthesizing are very important skills to develop. And analyzing and interpreting. I often will read fairly good drafts of papers, but there really isn't a lot of interpretation. It's mostly an integration of the material, but without the author's own interpretations or own comments about the articles. And that leads to this third point where you need to add your evaluation of the sources. Are they valuable and strong sources, or do you see a weakness in a particular article or argument? That's adding your voice, your own author voice, to your introduction lit review, which indicates that you have truly entered the academic article world when you're adding your voice. The fourth point is really about overall writing. And yes, I've listed this in introduction lit review, but it pertains to the entire paper, that we need to make sure that we're writing in well-structured paragraphs, that we're linking our paragraphs to the previous one so there's a logical flow, making sure that our paragraphs just have one main idea. Sometimes when we are really under pressure and trying to write quickly, we will add more than one idea to a paragraph. So I will show you kind of a checklist that we recommend for you to edit your work to look for how you can improve the structure or the flow of your writing. I want to emphasize that as you, and I mentioned this briefly, but as you come to a close of your intro and lit review section, the last paragraph is very important to make sure in that last final paragraph that you have restated your aim or purpose, that you are clearly articulating what you expect to contribute to your particular field of study. You present your research questions here, and I want to show you what I mean in the following example. So this is taken from the article that I cite here. It is the very last paragraph of her lit review. And you can see here, this study aims to explore. So she clearly spells it out what the study will explore. What will it contribute? Well, it's going to reveal more explicitly what the novice tutor gains. So she is again, calling out her contribution. And as you can see, she has clearly presented 2 research questions. Presenting the research questions like this at the end of the lit review is ideal because it provides a roadmap for the rest of your paper. The methodology follows the lit review, and the methodology is clearly based on your research questions. And the research questions obviously link to the results because you've done research based on your research questions, therefore you have results. Again, there should be alignment between research questions, methodology, results, and of course that ends up with your discussion. Your discussion should clearly address each research question. So that's why I always like to see the research questions clearly called out at the end of the literature review. And there may be other ways of presenting the research questions, but I think in the majority of academic articles that are published, at least in applied linguistics and teaching and learning English or languages, they often are at the end of the lit review. All right, so let's move on. All right, you've got your review, your literature review introduction drafted, and that includes your research questions, and you've gone out and from your research design, you have collected your data and you've analyzed your data. So once you have that information, you're ready to begin beginning your first draft. And first draft is really messy, and that is okay, all right? I like to say, embrace the mess. Do not worry about the first draft as far as what it says or what it doesn't say, because the draft 1 will always be followed by draft 2 and beyond. The important part is to just write, to sit down every day and work, and not to worry about, are you presenting this in the best way, or have you chosen the most academic vocabulary, or have you used the appropriate linkage, or is your writing cohesive? Don't worry about that in draft 1. Really, you're trying to get the information from your results and from your interpretation organized into the template that your journal requires. So that's what I say, just write. And being consistent really helps, like trying to establish some type of schedule or routine, or perhaps accountability with a writing partner in order to move this process along at a healthy rate. If we're not consistent, our writing sits, we have to review our results once again, we have to look at the literature once again, and it just takes a lot of time. So if we can do a little bit each day, we stay on top of our topic and we can move forward. So now you're ready to write your first draft. Remember, you have a draft of the lit review already. So now I suggest that you begin with an outline for each section that remains. So that would be the methods, results, discussion, conclusion. And the outline on what that particular section is all about. But remember, the whole theme of your paper is based on your research questions. So make sure that your research questions are guiding your outline. So you have an outline now for each section. I recommend starting writing with the methods section. Why? Because it's the easiest and it is straightforward. There's not a lot of variety in the methodology of how it's presented in academic papers. And it's very satisfying to get one section written. And what do you want to have in this methods section? These are the typical categories, maybe subcategories within the methods section. And I do recommend breaking the information out by subtitles, because when it's written in paragraph form, it's a little hard to identify the methodology and the components. So we have the overview, so that kind of an overview paragraph, short paragraph. We can reiterate the research questions, then describe the participants, who were they from, maybe ages, that type of thing. Describe each instrument, and it's important that both the participants and the instruments are linked to the research question. If there's more than one question, is a research, if you used an interview, was it to answer research question 1 or research question 2? So be clear that your instruments and your participants are linked to your research questions. Make sure you identify the location or whatever is acceptable from your journal. And of course, the procedures that you use to collect the data and your data analysis approach. Now you've got one section written, your methodology or methods, and you're ready to move to your results, your discussion, and conclusion. So these are all very important. Every section is important, but I want to distinguish between results and discussion, because sometimes these are confused in some papers. So let me tell you what I mean. What's the difference? Well, some journals clearly have a results section and a discussion section. Some journals combine them. So first of all, you'll need to know what your journal does. But if they are separate, make sure that you are only presenting the results. You're not adding your own voice or interpretation. I like to see the results clearly linked to the research question if there's more than one research question. We often use graphs and tables in the results, which is acceptable and encouraged depending on the type of data that you're presenting. But remember that you're going to summarize only your main findings. Not every result that you may have identified, that could be overwhelming, but you will explain how you identified or what were the main findings, and by research question. Last point is, do not discuss results or speculate as to why something happened, because that goes in the discussion section. So let's look at that. In the discussion, this is where you get to explain and comment on the results, and you need to. You need to address, so what do the results really mean? What are the implications? Do they contribute to the field? I find it very frustrating, I suppose, when I'm reading a paper and they have identified their results well, but when I get to the discussion section, they haven't taken the results and linked it to the context that their study connects to. It's really just sort of a narrative form of the results. So be sure that you're not repeating the results, but you're explaining and making a connection to the research field. And remember that you need to make sure that you're bringing or mentioning any key literature review or literature that you cited in your review in your discussion as well. There needs to be that full circle of showing the reader that your results and their implications makes a difference in the larger context of your research topic. In the discussion section, you're also noting any limitations that might have occurred within your study. And it's we often run into various limitations, and this is common to see in the discussion section. It does not what do I want to say? It does not make your paper look less favorable or anything, because ideally authors clearly articulate limitations, and so researchers who rely on their work in the future are fully informed. And this is where you can make recommendations for further research, which helps other people identify gaps in the future. So that is the discussion section. Now you have a draft of each of your sections. It's been some time since you have drafted your introduction lit review. So go back now and make sure that it is in the format and it describes your study that matches the rest of your paper. What you would be looking for here is this well connection between all the sections. So did you stay focused on the aim and purpose of your study? If there's any material in your paper that's not related to the aim or purpose, then that material does not need to be included. You need to be very specific on what you include in your research paper. Is it clear throughout your paper not only what your aim is, but that your research questions have guided each of your sections? So that's what I would be looking for when I'm connecting my introduction lit review with the rest of my paper. At this point, you can write your abstract and finalize your title. We often have a working title at this point, but you may want to revise your title to clearly match what your paper has addressed. There has to be 100% match between what is described in the title and what is actually in the paper. In your abstract, remember, a lot of readers won't get past your abstract unless they find something interesting, fascinating, new. So it has to be very well written. It has to clearly, there's 5 moves in the abstract that, just like there's 3 moves in the introduction. Let's see if I put the 5 moves. I did not put them here, but I have them if we need them. But this is where we are providing background information, our gap, what we expect to contribute, and let me check my notes as far as and what we discovered and the implications. So it's like the highlight of your paper in a nutshell, but it's not a repeat and it's not a cut and paste. Never cut and paste for your abstract, or never cut and paste your abstract into your introduction. That discourages the reader from actually enjoying your paper. So now you have everything drafted. I sit down and I read my paper aloud, because when we read aloud, we discover fairly quickly where a sentence is awkward, or we've forgotten a word, or those types of things. So make sure to read it aloud. You're not rewriting your paper at this point. You are just making obvious corrections. And you might note on your paper where you want to maybe add more substance or more clarity in draft 2, but don't stop in draft 1 at this point. The goal at this point is to have a solid draft 1 complete. And at that point, you can take a break. And I really, really encourage you to take a break. A break could be a few days, maybe. But what that does is it clears your mind, it recharges your writing energy, and we need that. We need that perspective from stepping away from our writing. It's very intense, this writing process. So take a break, not too long, because you don't want to lose that momentum and that knowledge that you've gained from all the academic research and reading you've been doing on this particular topic. All right, your break is over and we move forward. There we go. So draft 2 is really, this is what I call the revision edit phase. In a moment, we're going to show you a document that we use to help us edit in draft 2. But I want to walk you through sort of the overall. There's 2 aspects. First, we're looking at the overall paper. What do I mean by that? Well, the structure. All right, not the template exactly. Of course, you need to match the template, but the flow, the logic, the connectivity or cohesiveness of your paper. We're looking at paragraphs. I mentioned earlier, are the paragraphs, is there a clear topic sentence? Is it limited to one idea? Do the ideas in the paragraphs move to old to new information? Sentences. Are the sentences clear and an appropriate length? Now, a variety of sentence length is actually a desirable trait in our academic writing. We don't want every sentence to be short, and we don't want every sentence to be long, and we don't want every sentence to be structured just the same. We need a variety. But whatever they are, we need them to be clear. Of course, we avoid plagiarism. And we want to make sure that we're using an academic tone in our language use. And I can answer questions about that further, but what that might be is sometimes we can fall in the habit of using words like very, really, some, those types of short words that we commonly use in our conversation. But when it comes to academic writing, they do not belong. And so I've got some tips on that to show you. So from the overall editing, we can focus on section editing. So every section of a academic writing article has a best practice. And I refer to those as the moves that I've talked about today a bit in the introduction and in the abstract. But there's also other aspects that are important to consider for each content area. So we'll look at that together. So I'm going to give the screen over to, I think it's Yusnita, and she's going to show you the checklist I keep referring to here to help with editing.
All right. So we have what we call as a research client checklist. Jadi Bapak Ibu semuanya, di Academic Writing Center kami mengembangkan satu handout sederhana aja begitu mengenai bagaimana kita bisa menyusun dan memeriksa pekerjaan kita secara independen gitu, jadi kayak self editing. Research Article Client Checklist ini akan menunjukkan beberapa hal yang kita perlukan ketika kita selesai ngedraft gitu ya. Kemudian kira-kira apa yang kita bisa periksa. Kita mesti tahu research article section kita udah lengkap atau belum. Apakah sudah ada title, abstract, introduction, lead review. Apakah introduction dan lead review dalam section yang berbeda atau pada section yang sama. Kemudian tentu harus ada method, results, discussion. Sekali lagi, results and discussion mungkin akan berada di dalam berbagai jurnal artikel dalam nama atau bentuk yang berbeda, bisa disebut findings. Kadang results dan discussion akan berada di section yang berbeda pula. Kemudian yang terakhir tentu ada conclusion dan references. Pada handout yang kami buat ini ada beberapa hal yang bisa diperiksa, misalnya bagaimana kita bisa memeriksa struktur pekerjaan kita, struktur bahasanya ya, bagaimana flow ideas dalam masing-masing paragraf, dari paragraf ke paragraf begitu. Jadi kalau kita bicara struktur ini pada level kalimat kita udah bisa dibaca udah atau belum, apakah sudah lengkap subjek predikatnya dan sebagainya. Kemudian tentu kita bisa melihat paragraf, kalimat, bagaimana di situ kita bisa mengingatkan diri sendiri apakah kita sudah avoid plagiarism dan bagaimana kita sudah menggunakan language use. Dalam beberapa hal mungkin tenses yang diperlukan ketika kita menulis academic writing akan berbeda tensesnya ketika kita menulis hal-hal yang selain academic writing begitu. Jadi di sini kami juga memiliki satu rangkuman. Misalnya penggunaan present tense-nya itu banyak dalam satu academic writing, tetapi mungkin kita bisa hindari penggunaan misalnya pasif dikit-dikit aja begitu. Jadi udah biasa kalau kita sebagai orang Indonesia kadang-kadang menulisnya tuh banyak pasifnya begitu. Tetapi sebetulnya kalau kita usahakan untuk membuat kalimat dalam bentuk-bentuk aktif itu lebih preferable untuk berbagai jurnal internasional. Nah, kemudian pada masing-masing bagian di bagian bawahnya sini kita memiliki masing-masing checklist untuk masing-masing bagian. Ada title misalnya, apa yang kita mesti lihat. Apakah title kita kepanjangan, kependekan, intinya udah ada atau belum, apakah udah ada reflection dari metodologi yang kita gunakan, dan sebagainya. Bagaimana kita sudah menggunakan punctuation atau tanda baca yang sesuai. Kemudian untuk abstrak, apa saja yang harus masuk di dalamnya, misalnya abstrak yang biasanya hanya terdiri dari 200-250 kata itu, biasanya harus tetap mengandung elemen background, research purpose, methods, materials, results, findings, discussion, conclusion itu harus tetap ada, dan sebagainya. Jadi ada checklist masing-masing untuk masing-masing bagian dari academic article. Introduction, apa yang berada di dalamnya, termasuk dengan jenis tenses yang kita bisa gunakan. Kemudian literature review, termasuk juga jenis tenses yang kita bisa gunakan. Kemudian pada bagian methods, meskipun bagian methods ini akan berbeda ya untuk masing-masing bidang ilmu, kadang-kadang mereka yang di bidang ilmu eksakta, dan kita yang berada di humaniora misalnya, atau mereka yang mengambil pendekatan kuantitatif dan pendekatan kualitatif, kemungkinan methods-nya akan berbeda. Tetapi sebagai penulis yang ingin kita informasikan pada bagian methodology adalah apakah theoretical background, penggunaan methodological tools ini memang sudah sahih secara teori atau baik secara metodologi yang biasa digunakan. Kemudian yang paling penting adalah apakah ada kemungkinan untuk replicability? Apakah metodologi yang kita gunakan itu kita sampaikan dengan baik dalam bentuk tertulis sehingga pembaca dari draft kita atau jurnal artikel kita nanti bisa memahami, bisa mereplika jenis penelitian kita pada penelitian para peneliti selanjutnya begitu. Kemudian tentu ada bagian results yang biasanya merupakan penjabaran mentah dari hasil data mentah saja. Kemudian bagian interpretasi biasanya kita dapatkan pada bagian discussion. Jadi itu nanti yang akan membedakan antara bagian results and discussion kita. Pada bagian conclusion di situ biasanya cukup menantang juga bahwa membuat conclusion itu kita istilahnya tidak boleh jauh dari apa yang sudah kita tuliskan sejak bagian awal dari introduction hingga bagian results discussion. Jadi kita tidak memberikan new ideas, tetapi sudah merangkum materi-materi yang sudah ada di bagian sebelumnya begitu. Kemudian juga pada bagian referensi tidak ada di sini. Kami tidak berikan karena referensi yang diminta pada masing-masing jurnal atau referensi yang diminta oleh universitas misalnya, itu akan berbeda-beda standarnya. Jika kita di MIPA Science mungkin Chicago adalah pilihannya, tetapi di jurnal-jurnal humaniora biasanya kita menggunakan referensi berupa APA atau yang lainnya. Jadi memang ada ciri tersendiri untuk penggunaan referensi. Dan penggunaan referensi cukup teknis, tetapi sudah banyak bantuan mekanisme penggunaan citation machine atau referencing system elektronik seperti Mendeley, Zotero, dan lain sebagainya. Jadi itu sudah cukup ada banyak bantuan di situ. Demikian. Kami akan membagikan, we will provide you with the research client checklist. So it's a takeaway for all of you. So you can use it to check your own drafts while you're drafting, and hopefully that you can optimize the drafting process with the research client checklist. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusnita. Let me get back to where we were. Great. So we as a team have found our checklist to be very resourceful, and it also helps our clients. And we often will ask them to focus on a particular section when they come in for tutoring advice, and ask them to review the checklist for that section in advance. So we just have a more informed exchange. Okay, so now you have edited your draft number 2. You're feeling pretty confident or feeling pretty good about the shape of your paper at this point. So I believe at this point, this is when you're ready to share and seek feedback. And of course, that can be from your mentors, your colleagues, your peers, your writing circle if you have one, or if you have access to a writing tutor, that's ideal. But any of those or a combination, what the important part is getting an outside view, because as writers, we spend so much time in the detail of our writing. We need the fresh viewpoint of a reader not as familiar with our paper. And once we've incorporated that advice back into our paper, it's time to consider submission to your publication, but I encourage a double check with your journal requirements before submitting, making sure they haven't changed from the time you started your process till you finished your draft that or your paper that you're planning to submit. Sometimes a few months can go by, we don't know. So check to make sure that they haven't changed, that you have complied with word count, style, formatting, page numbers, all of those things. Anything that can kind of get in the way for an editor or a reviewer. And then, of course, you wait, and you patiently wait. And in almost all cases, we will receive a letter that hopefully it's a letter that allows us to resubmit with the changes that are recommended by the editorial board. sometimes we're outright rejected, and if that's the case, then we can aim to submit to another journal. But be prepared. It's very, very rare to have an article accepted on your initial submission. It happens, but it's rare. That is the primary content I wanted to share this morning, but I do have some resources here besides the checklist that I have put together to help any writer. So these are general resources. So we have just getting started and conducting the research. In number 2 here, or the second one, I'm a big fan, our whole team is, of using the Manchester Phrase Bank for language prompts and phrasing. We can look at that in a Q&A if that's of interest to you. The academic word list is very valuable, and it's fun to actually sort of determine, like, how many of the words do you know or not know, and we can all continue to build our own academic vocabulary, not just our students. There's a sample paper here I've highlighted in yellow. This would be perhaps more for a student type paper, and of course plagiarism, in case we need to educate others about plagiarism. That's a good source. These are good sources for further information about how to go about identifying a topic and developing that topic. I highlighted the tips, but of course, there's a deeper dive with both of these papers and examples. Well, one is a video, the YouTube video, and the other is a paper. I use these resources to help write an article about how to find the right journal. And so I found them helpful. And so feel free to borrow my work there if you want more in-depth information of finding a journal. There's many resources for writing your intro lit review. I have 2 here from YouTube that I have used in courses that people usually respond to well, because they don't have to sift through an article. They can listen and watch and via YouTube. That brings us to your questions.
Yeah, all right.
So I'm going to stop sharing and back to you, Nisa.
Thank you, Miss Andrea, Miss Garner, for the very insightful presentation. And I'm sure that we have a lot of information regarding to the writing and also for the publication tips. Yeah. All right. So it's time for question and answer session. Maybe if you have any question, you can directly chat on our chat box, or you may have the feature raise hand, and then you can please turn on your microphone, and then you can directly say to us about the question you raised. Okay. Maybe is there any questions so far? Or I will take a look to this chat box. Okay, we have a question. It is for Ibu Andrea. Do you have any YouTube channel? Also, if I want to listen more about your advice, where can I find them? Okay, so Ibu Andrea, it is the question from Ibu Sohila Esmat. She asked you whether you have a YouTube channel or not.
Okay. Well, I don't at this point have a YouTube channel, but I do have a lot of resources I am totally willing to share. It may be it may be helpful to know more about the topics that the participant is interested in, and I'm happy to share those and with whomever might be interested, right?
All right. Yes, thank you, Ibu Andrea. So maybe what I want to add is Balai Bahasa has the YouTube channel. So sorry, Academic Writing Center actually have the YouTube channel, and then you can subscribe and also watch the video that Ibu Andrea give the presentation in every webinar we have held before. And the name of our YouTube channel is Academic Writing Center at BBB FS UM. So you can directly search on the YouTube channel, and then you can find our list of video of our webinar sessions.
Some information, Andrea. Ibu Sohila Asmat is an international student from Egypt. So she is enrolled in one of the programs at UM. And I think this is a good occasion for us to remind everyone that Academic Writing Center at Balai Bahasa Universitas Negeri Malang is open for all of UM students. And if you are international students, you can contact Ibu Fidelia Fitri to get more information about the Academic Writing Center and the services that you can get. Sayang sekali, tetapi kami belum membuka layanan untuk komunitas di luar Universitas Negeri Malang. Tetapi layanan yang kami lakukan tentunya hanya berupa webinar seperti ini yang sedang kita lakukan saat ini. Jadi mudah-mudahan nanti pada kegiatan kita berikutnya kita bisa membuka workshop atau webinar yang lebih kecil, lebih intimate, sehingga kita bisa melihat masing-masing draft dari peserta kita supaya ada improvement yang konkret pada draft yang sedang dikerjakan peserta. Dan mudah-mudahan kita akan ada kolaborasi lagi dengan Universitas Kanjuruhan Malang. Terima kasih.
Alright, thank you, Ibu Yusnita, for additional information. Yeah.
And Nisa, can you put the link to the YouTube in the chat box? That would be great. And sorry, I forgot about that because I've actually never watched myself on the YouTube channel.
That's okay, but Andrea, maybe I can write down here about the name of the YouTube channel of Academic Writing Center. Okay, so we go to the next question, Ibu Andrea. It is from Arianti. So what are the most common mistakes when writers write a journal?
The most common mistakes. So not in getting published, but just in writing. I would say, and I mentioned them, but not maybe clearly. So let me summarize what those are. Is that staying focused on the paper's aim, okay? Sometimes authors can get excited about something that's not directly related, or maybe they found a great paper that they want to paraphrase, but that's really not related to the study's aim. So that's number one. Number two may be making sure that the research questions are adequately linked in the methodology results discussion. So everything connects to the research questions. That's like, so the big theme is the aim of the purpose, and the sub-theme are the research questions, and everything should tie. Then I would say maybe number three would be, it's very, very challenging, I know, but it's that whole integration of previous literature, how to present the literature that's been completed in a meaningful way and adding your own interpretations or your own comments. That's the part where I said adding your voice. So those are probably the top three issues I see in a paper. Is that clear?
Yeah. Okay, is that clear, Ibu Arianti? Hopefully is that that's clear for you. So maybe if you still have any question raised for the Ibu Andrea's explanation, you may directly go to the chat box again. And this is the third question, Ibu Andrea, from Excel Balance. I would like to ask, what can you do to get inspiration to improve our writing? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's
Maybe
essential.
yeah.
It's essential to, in order to be inspired, to be writing about something that matters to you.
Yeah.
That's why the topic is so important. That it motivates you because you want to learn, you want to read about this particular topic and learn more. So that for me, that's essential for me to get up every day and write. If it's something I am not really too connected to, or I don't understand very well, it just becomes a chore. It becomes work. And writing should be enjoyable, even though it's painful. It should be enjoyable.
Yeah.
I would like to hear from Ibu Yusnita. I mean, what about inspiration?
It's academic writing sometimes can be nurtured. The topic for our academic writing is not like a narrative writing, let's say. It's not stories to tell. It is based on evidence, facts, observations. So it is good to start with something that you like, but of course, that's why everybody in undergrads, postgrads, they have their supervisors for discussions to talk about the updates in the fields of the studies that they are in right now, so that they can see what is the gap in the previous studies that has not been addressed and what can you do about it. Of course, you can always relate to your interest. You can always relate to something that attracts, that's appealing to you, let's say, even if we are in the field of English education, let's say. Some people would like to, I like the discussion about listening studies better than the reading studies, for example. And then I also like to take materials from open sources like the internet or TikTok or Reels for my materials, for example. So you can always incorporate this interest into your research project. However, it is very important to still match all of this with the previous research. What's the gap that has not been addressed, so that we don't just make our academic writing into something like a fun playground that we can put our interest into an academic setting. It's not that simple. The section in our journal article, which is the methodology section, that is very important for us to tell our readers that we have a good background knowledge in methodology, in theory, that our personal appeal can actually be discussed in academic manner.
So maybe the point is we need to find our own way to enjoy our writing process. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for adding the information of how to motivate ourselves in writing. So we go to the next question. Okay, do you have from Muhammad Margi, do you have any tips, Ibu Andrea, so our academic writing is not really biased? Yeah, avoiding the bias in writing the article, maybe.
Avoiding bias and remaining open-minded, perhaps. Let's see. Well, I think as Yusnita just described, our work is based in facts, right, and established research, and so we have an obligation to present that previous research in a neutral format, right? Not to present it in a biased format that helps support our argument. We have to be neutral. And then as we present our results and interpretations, we need to, again, check ourselves that our evidence truly supports the conclusions that we're making. Otherwise, we have a hole in our argument, right? So I think by taking those steps, we can avoid any bias in our manuscripts. If that is a concern of yours, or maybe it's something that you've done in the past unintentionally, ask a reader to particularly check that for you. That's what we all have an obligation to help each other as readers in our drafts. So that's a reasonable request.
Okay, so thank you, Ibu Andrea. But unfortunately, we do not have any time to answering those several questions in line. But I have one last question, maybe Ibu Andrea, you can answer. It is from Betsy. I would like to ask about novelty and gap because I'm still confused about that novelty and gap. Can you explain it?
Okay. When I think of novelty, I think of originality or adding something new to the world of research in my particular topic. And gap is there's a something missing from the research field, right? Or a need. So they do overlap, and it's important that they're both significant enough to connect with the researchers and the reader. We don't want a gap that is so small that people would question, does that really justify a research study? Or something that we're adding is so new. So for instance, maybe there's been a particular study of a particular technique in an elementary school setting, and it's been done in grades or levels 4 through 6, but no one's done it for level 3. From my perspective, that's a very small contribution to the world of research. And so think about being original and think about making a gap or filling a gap that is substantial enough to make a difference.
All right. So thank you so much, Ibu Andrea, for the answers. Okay. Unfortunately, we do not have any time to answering the question and answer session in this time. So if you still have a question, maybe for all the participants, you can directly contact the Academic Writing Center, and then we can help you to deliver the question to the to Ibu Andrea, and then we can help to give the answer again to you. And we can you can reach our email and also our WhatsApp on academic writing center.fs@um.ac.id, or maybe on the WhatsApp number. So maybe the administrator after this like to give you the WhatsApp number of Academic Writing Center. So thank you so much, Ibu Andrea, for this time. And After this, we will have the photo session for before we end our session today. So maybe we can start the photo session right now. And please, all the participants open the camera and we will have the photo session for this time. Okay. Maybe
Okay, thank you very much
someone
everyone for opening your
can-
video for our photo session. I will lead the photo session. I have 8 pages here. This is for the first page. Okay, and then we will go to the second one. All right, bear with me. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Untuk halaman ketiga, 1, 2, 3. This is the fourth page. 1, 2, 3. Untuk halaman kelima, 1, 2, 3. Untuk halaman ke-6, 1, 2, 3. Untuk halaman ke-7, 1, 2, 3. Untuk halaman ke-8, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Beautiful
so much.
smiles.
Ibu Yusnita, we have so many pages here since we have almost 200 participants here. Okay, so don't forget for all the participants to fill in the attendance list that we have provided the link in our chat box, and we can back to the master of ceremony. Thank you.
Ya, thank you. Sebelumnya mohon maaf
ya.
jika masih ada pertanyaan Bapak Ibu, silakan disampaikan melalui nomor WhatsApp Academic Writing Center atau melalui emailnya juga. Terima kasih. Silakan Ibu Jihan.
Okay, thank you very much. Finally, from the deepest of my heart, I do apologize for my mistakes in presenting this webinar. Thank you very much for coming. We hope that this event will be beneficial for all of us. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you everyone.
Thank you everyone. Terima kasih banyak.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Oke, mohon izin live ya. Terima kasih. Thank you Bu Yusnita. Sami-sami.